They flew in silence and no radar caught them. No sirens howled, just darkness. Then impact, 13,000 kilometers away, and yet in the dead of night, Iran's most secure and secretive bunkers crumbled beneath the earth like paper castles in a storm. This wasn't just a strike, this was a message. A message carried on the wings of America's deadliest shadow, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. From the heartland of Missouri to the hardened bunkers of Iran, these machines traversed continents undetected, unleashing the fury of pinpoint precision on underground nuclear facilities the world wasn't even sure existed. These weren't ordinary targets. They were fortresses buried beneath mountains, shielded by concrete and secrecy. Yet nothing stood a chance when American stealth met advanced ordnance. How did they do it? It wasn't magic. It was military mastery, strategic supremacy, and a level of technological brilliance that only a few nations dare dream of. Let's unpack this operation, not just for the sake of understanding, but because what happened that night could reshape global power, draw new red lines, and potentially spark a fire that no one can control. A1T JOAS KIB 2 SPLTs OS on power. The B-2 isn't just a bomber, it's a ghost. Its radar signature is so small. It appears no larger than a bird. Flying over oceans, deserts, and enemy territory, it remained invisible to the most advanced Iranian air defense systems. Its skin is covered with radar-absorbing materials. Its curved shape deflects signals, and its flight path is calculated with surgical precision. Iran never even knew what hit them until the earth shook beneath their feet. The weapon of choice. The massive ordnance penetrator, or simply the MOP, 30,000 pounds of devastation designed for one job, only to punch through the earth and crush whatever lies below. When the B-2 dropped these bombs from high altitude, they weren't just targeting a facility, they were targeting the very idea of immunity. These weapons burrowed through meters of rock and steel before detonating with an explosive force that left nothing intact, not machinery, not programs, not hope. Mighty AI Reflating May Test Missile Possibility 13,000 km is not a flight, it's an odyssey. But for the B-2, that range was just a number. Thanks to a web of mid-air refueling tankers, the bomber stayed airborne for over 40 hours, guided by satellite intel, strategic command, and precision pilots trained for the impossible. This mission wasn't just a strike, it was a symphony of coordination, and every second counted. Miss a refuel window, the mission fails. But this was flawless, and Iran learned that distance is no shield when the B-2 is in play. This wasn't just about neutralizing a threat, it was about establishing dominance. It was about showing the world, especially nations like China, Russia, North Korea, that no bunker is deep enough, no facility is far enough, and no regime is untouchable when the stakes rise. This strike, though surgical, echoed through every intelligence agency, every foreign ministry, and every war room. Iran's hardened bunkers were its last line of secrecy, and now they lie exposed in modern warfare. Fear isn't always triggered by the sound of incoming missiles or the roar of fighter jets overhead. Sometimes, the most terrifying weapon is the one you never hear, the enemy you can't see. This is the dark power of stealth, and in the case of the US B-2 Spirit, it's not just a strategic advantage, it's a psychological weapon. The kind that haunts minds, paralyzes command chains, and leaves nations scrambling in uncertainty. Imagine being part of a military force in a high, alert region like Iran, trained to monitor the skies for possible threats. Every day you sit behind radar screens, trusting that if anything threatens your country, it will be seen coming. But suddenly, bunkers explode. Hardened underground nuclear sites collapse. Sirens don't wail because no threat was detected. The hit is clean, clinical, silent. That's not just a military loss. That's mental disintegration. That's fear blooming from the unknown. Because what hits you once undetected can hit you again. Anytime, anywhere. The B-2 Spirit bomber doesn't just defy radar, it exploits fear itself. Designed with cutting-edge stealth technology, it virtually disappears from radar systems. Its sleek flying wing design reflects very little electromagnetic energy. Its radar-absorbent coating makes it one of the most invisible aircraft ever built. Even advanced systems like Iran's Russian-made S-300 surface-to-air missiles struggle to track it. To most radar systems, a B-2 looks like a small bird, or nothing at all. This level of invisibility plays tricks on the human mind. Military commanders can no longer rely on technology alone. They know a threat may be in the sky, even if their systems say otherwise. This uncertainty creates paranoia at the highest levels. Defensive postures become reactive. The stress doesn't stop when the strike is over. It lingers, grows, and spreads like a virus. Analysts start guessing. Commanders second-guess decisions. Civilians question safety. The result, a breakdown in both confidence and control. Real-world testimonies from stealth bomber pilots and military strategists confirm this psychological ripple effect. One B-2 pilot in a declassified statement said, "It's not just about dropping bombs. It's about shaking the belief that your enemy can protect themselves. They can't shoot what they can't see. They can't fight what they can't find." And that's precisely what happens when stealth becomes a psychological operation. It introduces doubt into doctrine. Nations like Iran, who heavily invest in hardened bunkers, radar systems, and anti-air defenses, realize that none of it matters if the enemy is already inside the bubble. Military leaders are forced to question everything. If we didn't see them this time, what else have we missed? That simple question becomes a slow, burning fire in strategic discussions. The fear of invisible power leads to hurried overhauls of defense protocols. More money is spent not to deter or defeat, but to guess, to prepare for ghosts in the sky. What makes this worse is the silence of a stealth strike. Unlike traditional bombing raids, there is no warning, no scramble of jets, no red lights blinking on radars. No dramatic dogfights. There's only the aftermath, devastation without explanation. Targets are hit with such precision that military analysts often assume it was an inside job before they even consider stealth. That's how deep the disbelief goes. Stealth then becomes mental warfare. It's not about defeating the enemy. It's about breaking them slowly, psychologically, permanently. And perhaps the most haunting part, the people on the ground don't even know when they're being watched. The B-2 operates at altitudes above 50,000 feet. It can circle for hours, days, and the enemy doesn't even know it's there. The fear becomes existential, an invisible force constantly looming overhead, changing their sleep patterns, their routines, their politics. They build bunkers only to realize their tombs when hit by the MOP. They invest in defense systems that can't even detect the attacker. They build illusions of safety shattered in a single silent pass. This is the new age of warfare, not just domination by firepower, but psychological supremacy through invisibility. A war where no shot needs to be fired to shake a government, where fear travels faster than any missile. So when Iran's deepest bunkers exploded without warning, it wasn't just steel and concrete that fell. It was trust, it was belief, it was the quiet invasion of the mind. And that is a battlefield no nation is prepared for, the shadow war. Was this just the beginning? What if the bombing of Iran's deepest bunkers wasn't the climax, but the opening act? In the dark corridors of global strategy, nothing is done without a signal, and this strike, silent, surgical, and devastating, was not just about Iran. It was a carefully calculated message to the world. Written in shockwaves and craters, the U.S. didn't just flex military muscle. It whispered a threat to multiple ears. We're watching, and we can strike even where you think we can't. Let's step into the fog of what's now being called the shadow war. A conflict not openly declared, yet fiercely unfolding behind headlines, beneath diplomacy, and beyond borders. First, understand this: the B-2 stealth bombers were not randomly dispatched. These aren't weapons of casual use. They're symbols of high-priority targeting, and to send them across 13,000 kilometers, supported by a web of satellite intelligence and mid-air refueling, is an orchestrated escalation. The targets: Iran's underground nuclear development facilities, sites Tehran has long claimed are peaceful, but the West suspects are preparing for far more sinister capabilities. The fact that the U.S. chose to strike them so deeply, with zero casualties and without warning, screams intent. Not just to destroy infrastructure, but to warn. And not only Iran, Israel is a crucial player in this silent theater. For years, it has been lobbying the international community to take Iran's nuclear aspirations seriously. Netanyahu's government has made it clear: a nuclear Iran is an existential threat. This recent strike, though not officially claimed as a joint USA-Israeli operation, aligns almost too perfectly with Tel Aviv's long-standing agenda. The timing, the choice of target, the precision, all of it hints that Israel was at least informed, if not involved through intelligence channels. But what's more telling is Israel's reaction, or lack thereof. No celebration, no condemnation, just calculated silence. This is strategic behavior. Israel wants Iran to stew in confusion, to wonder how much deeper the cooperation between Washington and Tel Aviv goes. It's psychological warfare. If Iran retaliates against Israel, they risk dragging the region into a broader war. If they don't, they look weak. Either way, Israel wins a moment of strategic advantage. And for now, they hold the high ground, not just militarily, but diplomatically. Meanwhile, Russia sits in the background, quietly observing. Moscow has long-standing ties with Tehran, both economic and military. Russia helped upgrade Iran's air defense systems, and the delivery of the S-300 missile platform was supposed to secure Iran from airstrikes. Yet, the B-2 slipped past everything. This is more than an embarrassment, it's a strategic wake-up call for Russia. If American stealth can defeat their best technology, what does that say about their own vulnerability? But Russia won't respond with loud condemnation. That's not how they play. They gather, analyze, recalibrate. They understand this strike wasn't just about Tehran's ambitions, it was also about testing Russian deterrence by proxy. The Kremlin now knows when America wants to move, even its most advanced exported systems can't stop it. That realization will send tremors through their planning, especially in places like Syria, Crimea, and even their own Far East. And then there's China. While Beijing has no deep military alliance with Iran, it has deep interests, oil pipelines, trade routes, and a common vision of a multipolar world where American dominance is challenged. China watches Iran as a geopolitical pressure point, a place where the U.S. stretches itself thin, creating room for Chinese influence elsewhere. But now, China sees that even as America pivots to the Pacific, it can still strike globally with terrifying accuracy. That's a problem. Beijing has spent billions building artificial islands, fortifying the South China Sea, developing anti-access area denial strategies. But if a B-2 can fly 13,000 km undetected and strike hardened Iranian bunkers, what does that say about China's own deep shelters? What about their inland missile silos or command posts? Suddenly, the map looks different. Vulnerability replaces confidence. Fear creeps in. So was this strike just a standalone event? Highly unlikely. It looks, smells, and feels like a signal flare, a fairy one. A message broadcast not through words, but through impact. The U.S. showed not just Iran, but every adversary and potential challenger that it still dominates in reach, precision, and psychological warfare. The strike wasn't just a military maneuver. It was a demonstration, a rehearsal for scenarios far more dangerous. A reminder that even in a world of drones, proxies, and cyber attacks, the long shadow of American air power still covers the earth. In many ways, this was the first move in a new phase of global conflict, a shadow war where lines are blurred, where silence is strategy, and where messages are dropped from the sky instead of spoken on stages. The question now is, who will answer next? And will the next message be louder? Can Iran retaliate? When a nation's most fortified bunkers are struck with chilling precision, the natural question that follows is, will they strike back? For Iran, the answer is tangled in military limitations, geopolitical risks, and the delicate balance between pride and survival. Yet, beneath the surface of all these calculations lies a volatile truth. Desperation makes anything possible. Iran has long prided itself on being a resilient power in the Middle East, a nation that stood tall even under crushing sanctions, cyber attacks, assassinations of its top commanders, and political isolation. But this recent strike, executed from 13,000 kilometers away by stealth bombers that its air defense systems couldn't detect, was not just an assault on infrastructure. It was a strategic humiliation, and in the political fabric of Iran, humiliation cannot go unanswered. But how Iran responds is a much more complicated question than if it wants to. The first challenge lies in Iran's military capabilities. Iran's air force is largely built on outdated American aircraft from the Shah era, including the F-4 Phantom and F-14 Tomcat, which, despite upgrades and reverse engineering, are no match for modern U.S. fighter jets, let alone stealth bombers. Their ability to launch a retaliatory strike against U.S. assets, either directly or indirectly, is limited, particularly if it means leaving Iranian airspace. Attempting to challenge the United States in open skies would be military suicide. Even on the ground, Iran's air defense network is fragmented and unevenly distributed. While they have invested in Russian-made S-300 systems and developed their own Bavar 3073 missile platforms, these defenses proved ineffective against an invisible enemy. The B-2's ability to penetrate deep into Iranian territory without being tracked sends a sobering message Iran's skies are not as secure as they believed. This creates a dilemma. Any retaliation attempt that escalates to aerial warfare risks exposing even more vulnerabilities. Diplomatically, Iran is isolated. Years of strained relations with the West, the collapse of the nuclear deal, JCPOA, and deepening tensions with Sunni neighbors have left Tehran with few reliable allies. Russia and China may provide limited support, but neither is likely to back Iran in an open conflict with the United States. In fact, both would likely urge caution. They benefit more from a stable Middle East where the U.S. is entangled diplomatically than from a full-scale war that could disrupt global energy markets and draw unwanted attention to their own regional agendas. This leaves Iran with few direct options: a missile strike against a U.S. base in the Gulf. It's been done before, and the consequences were carefully contained. But this time, with the psychological trauma of the stealth attack still fresh, a more significant retaliation might trigger a larger U.S. response, one Terra knows it cannot withstand. Cyber warfare might seem like a safer route. Iran has already demonstrated cyber capabilities in the past, targeting critical infrastructure, banks, and even water systems in the West. But the U.S. Cyber Command is no passive observer. Escalation in this domain carries its own risks, especially with America's proven ability to respond with devastating digital attacks, like the infamous Stuxnet operation that once crippled Iran's nuclear centrifuges. Another route is via proxies, Iran's long-favored method of engagement. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shiite militias in Iraq, and Houthi rebels in Yemen all serve as arms of Iran's reach. Strikes against U.S. troops, embassies, or allied interests through these groups provide Tehran with plausible deniability while satisfying domestic calls for revenge. But even this strategy is not without cost. Proxy attacks risk triggering retaliatory strikes, not only on Iranian proxies, but on Iranian soil, especially now that the U.S. has proven it can reach anywhere, anytime. Yet amidst all this limitation lies the most dangerous element of all: desperation. History has shown that cornered nations do not always act rationally. Pride, nationalism, and internal pressure from hardliners in the Revolutionary Guard Corps could push Tehran to retaliate aggressively, even recklessly. Domestic politics matter here. The regime must maintain the image of strength and defiance, particularly with its base of support. Inaction could be interpreted as weakness, emboldening opposition voices and undermining authority. So, will Iran retaliate? It is very likely they want to, but how they choose to do it will depend on whether they prioritize vengeance or survival. They may bide their time, waiting for the right moment to strike through less traceable means, or they may lash out in symbolic fashion, just enough to appease their population, without triggering a wider war. But one thing is now certain: the balance of deterrence has shifted. Iran has been shown that even its deepest strongholds are vulnerable, and that changes the entire strategic game. They are wounded, they are humiliated, and that makes them dangerous. Not because they're stronger than before, but because now they have something far more explosive than bombs, a need to prove they are not powerless. The night those bunkers fell, the world entered a new chapter. This wasn't a Hollywood mission. It was a display of 21st century warfare: silent jets flying across continents, bombs slicing through stone, and messages sent without a single word spoken. This is the age of preemptive power, where stealth doesn't just mean hidden, it means unstoppable. The B-2 didn't just bomb Iran, it rewrote the rules of distance, defense, and deterrence. As the dust settles over the Middle East, one truth remains: when the U.S. decides to strike, no place is too far, no target is too deep, and no enemy is too safe. The world watched in silence, Iran listened in rubble, and history was written in shadows.